What if I told you that a quarter of women could not correctly identify the vagina? Or that women are being taught more about the biology of frogs than their own bodies in school? Or that 1/3 of women don't understand their own menstrual cycle or how it affects their day-to-day lives? Not understanding the basics of your own body, it really just doesn't make sense. Hi, my name's Amy Leisha. I'm obsessed with health and especially women's health. I have dug into a lot of research and the data will shock you. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how the education system is broken, why the pill is a misleading scam, the pain and suffering these two things have caused, and finally, how to fix it, so you don't have to leave this video depressed. To start, the education system is broken. I know the words education system sound boring, but I promise you it's not. Remember what I said about frogs? This is a real statistic. A survey found that 80% of teenage girls agreed that they were taught more about the biology of frogs than the human female body in school. Does that really even make sense? Women are not taught enough about their own health. I have never needed to recall the biology of a frog in day-to-day life. However, the education I have on menstrual cycle health and fertility has actually changed my life and overall health. There are countless surveys and statistics that have been done year after year expressing the same inadequate education. Women and teens repeatedly express not only a lack of knowledge and understanding of their menstrual cycle and the effect it has on their bodies, but also this lack of education is in the schooling system. A survey in 2023 found that 80% of teens in the US said there needed to be more in-depth education about menstrual health or that it should be a part of the core curriculum. It is not compulsory to teach about menstrual health in the US. There is no national standard. The United States does have the National Sexuality Education Standards, which serves as the framework discussed in schools. However, it's a voluntary framework. It is not required to actually teach on menstrual health. As a school, you don't have to teach girls about their own bodies if you don't want to. Actually crazy. Michigan, Oregon, and Utah are currently the only states in which menstruation management is explicitly included in school health standards. That is only 3 of the 50 states across America. Tell me you don't see a problem with this. And in the UK, it only became compulsory for schools in 2019. Is it just me, or is it 2019 only 6 years ago? The first school in the UK opened 1,426 years ago. So for over 1,000 years, not a single person thought we should teach women about the #1 most impactful health issue they're gonna face. What other health thing impacts you every month for majority of your life and has the ability to determine whether you'll be able to have kids or not? No wonder there's a knowledge gap when the education systems are not required to teach about menstrual health. Now, when menstrual education is provided, what's actually being taught? A recent Australian survey identified young school-age women's perception of the menstrual health education provided to them. These were the main findings. They believed it was all just biology. Anatomy is good, but very limited in the big picture. What use is theory of how a system should work if it's not able to be practically applied? The next point addressed, it was all theoretical, cause, not effect. Any menstrual concerns they had were not adequately addressed. Pretty much, it was just basic, clinical, theoretical anatomy, not addressing or related to real physical questions girls actually have about their cycles. Like, why do I only get my period every 3 months? Why am I leaking other fluids at other times of the month? How much bleeding is too much bleeding? Should I be in pain? When should I see a doctor? What is each stage of the cycle telling me about my health? And so on. And lastly, the education was too little, too late. So well after many of them had already had their first period. Being given any information about the menstrual cycle only after a girl first gets her period is crazy. Because imagine you start bleeding large amounts of blood from your body for days on end without warning. In any other scenario, this would be very alarming and scary. That is if you have no idea that this is actually a normal bodily process and it's okay to bleed for an entire week of a month. I think schools should bare minimum tell girls well and truly before the age of getting a period what a period is. Any education that is being provided is usually very basic and not focused on how women can understand and manage their own cycles in relation to their health, how to identify any abnormalities or problems, and how to address them. As a result, causing poorer health outcomes. It feels very problematic when we have young people unable to identify problems that they actually have with their own body, purely just from a lack of education. Another thing with the education system, there is an overemphasis on pregnancy and STI prevention. This is certainly not a bad thing, however, it is not the only thing that needs to be addressed or emphasized. This being pretty much the only form of preventative health is disappointing. I have very distinct memory of learning about the arrays of STIs available for the catching, and my teacher demonstrating all the different contraceptive options for us to assess and weigh up when I was in, 7th or 8th grade. There was a lot of time spent on this because pregnancy and STIs were the main focus. The education system was successful if they could reduce teen pregnancy and STI rates. The metrics are accessible and they look good. No one seemed to care to assess health outcomes for women, including fertility preservation, PCOS, endometriosis, dysmenorrhea awareness, and education. I had no idea what they were until recent years of self-discovery. It wasn't something that really even crossed my radar in my high school, early teen years, so it wasn't something to look out for. This is the standard story for most. Pretty sure most people believe they could fall pregnant at any given moment of their cycle, so contraception was a must, just in case you fell pregnant just looking at a guy. And STIs are everywhere. Ultra nasty, and you might catch one just by sitting on the toilet. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but that's the caliber of the emphasis on these two topics. The fear tactics were strong. There is so little education for women around our bodies, and the education available is most often fear-based. Now let's quickly talk about shame. A woman's menstrual cycle is rarely talked about, desired, or celebrated. I believe because there is so many misconceptions around it. I read a quote online that puts it into perspective very well. Losing your first tooth is a rite of passage for many children. But what if we never talked to them about this being a normal part of childhood? Imagine they didn't know what was happening, scared of the newfound gap in their mouth. Instead of rewarding a child with a dollar bill, our silence and stigma led to them to hide this experience out of embarrassment. Imagine if we didn't tell them how to take care of their new smile. That's pretty much what's happening with women and their menstrual cycles today. Periods are a healthy natural bodily function, yet it is seen as gross, unclean, nasty, and something many girls are made fun of. It is rarely spoken about, makes people uncomfortable, and there is a negative stigma around it. CVS Health recently found that 33% of women have felt ashamed about having a period. 41% of Australians surveyed also reported feeling shame as a result of their period. Most US women who have menstruated, at 55%, say they felt embarrassed about their period at some point in their life. 46% of UK women said they felt embarrassed the first time they got their period, 35% said they felt scared, and 24% said they felt confused. That's a lot of statistics, with a lot of women expressing that they have felt shame or embarrassment at some point or another when it came to their period. These are really high numbers, and honestly, it's quite sad. I believe the taboo nature and shame around periods contributes to the lack of education. Teachers have expressed discomfort in teaching about puberty. More than 34% of female teachers and 83% of male teachers in one study said they did not feel confident addressing the topic of menstruation. Even the people supposed to be teaching these things don't feel comfortable about it, whether they experience it or not. Why is this bodily process different to any other? This becomes a negative spiral as the societal lack of education, awareness, or even comfort to talk about menstruation in turn creates more shame and widens the knowledge gap. I do believe this is also tied into the societal shift away from celebrating feminism and towards masculinity. I'm not going to go into that though. If you want to hear more about that, check out my video titled How Society Tricked Women into Hating Kids. That's on my channel. With so much discomfort around the seemingly taboo topic of female menstruation, no wonder health education is lacking. Moving on to the pill is a misleading scam. Let me explain why. The pill was brought in the 1960s and brought newfound freedom for women when it came to pregnancy prevention. However, it also brought with it a number of consequences that I don't believe were assessed. One being the overprescription of it for things that are not pregnancy prevention. Hormonal birth control are any birth control options that are infused with synthetic versions of your sex hormones, which cause varying degrees of endocrine disruption. They aim to stop ovulation and your natural cycle. On a molecular level, the hormones in hormonal birth control are completely different from the estrogen and progesterone your body naturally produces. So the synthetic versions are just that, they are synthetic. So although they mimic very closely, they really are designed to throw a spanner in the works of your natural cycle. The pill does not regulate the menstrual cycle. It just appears that way. When it was first created, women thought they were pregnant when on the pill because they didn't get a period. So a fake bleed was added to make women think that they had a regular cycle and that it wasn't actually messing with the normal cycle of their bodies. Thinking that you can stop or suppress your cycle with hormonal birth control or the pill without consequences is a lie. There is also risk associated with it that is often heavily downplayed. If you've ever been on the pill, you would hopefully know that you have an increased risk of deep vein thrombosis, clots, stroke, and the doctor always mentions it's minimal and probably fine, so you don't think twice about it. However, what they fail to mention, it's all the other risks associated, including some of the following: the increased risk of anxiety, depression, lowered libido, and hormonal imbalance. Laboratory neuroscience studies have shown estrogen and progesterone in the pill greatly influence neurochemistry. It literally changes your brain. They can also cause nutrient deficiencies by disrupting absorption. It has been shown that the key nutrient depletions from hormonal birth control, or the pill, concerns folic acid, vitamin B2, B6, B12, vitamin C and E, and the mineral magnesium, selenium, selenium, and zinc. That is a lot of nutrient depletion. And if you're not told that and you're not then supplementing that to try and fix it, people are just going to end up with malnutrition. Everyone raise your hand if you were told you'd probably have nutrient deficiencies if you went on the pill. It can also shrink the clitoris, vulva, and ovaries after just 3 months of taking it. It's physiologically changing the structure of your anatomy. Certainly not ideal, in my opinion. Also, long-term hormonal birth control increases risks of breast, cervical, and liver cancer. And an imbalance of hormones, estrogen and progesterone, can actually increase risk of cancer also. Cancer is ultra nasty and is not something that should be taken lightly. The pill increases the chance of cancer. Major red flag. And hormonal imbalances also increase cancer risk. The pill literally disrupts hormones with hormones. Double whammy. It can take up to 12 months for your natural cycle to return when coming off hormonal birth control and should be factored in when trying to conceive. There are so many different side effects and risks that I just don't really think are spoken about but are very researched. The pill was the first drug ever developed to shut down a perfectly normal and healthy process in the body. So why do doctors overprescribe contraception, a pregnancy prevention drug, as a treatment for menstrual cycle abnormalities? It only creates a fake cycle and masks the true problem, leaving women potentially worse off than when they walked in. I don't think hormonal contraceptives are the enemy. I think the way they are being commonly used without the proper education and information is the problem. I certainly was not told any of this when the doctor tried to put me on the pill, not for contraception. As cited in an Australian study, low levels of health literacy are associated with overall poorer health status, less adherence to correct medication protocols, and less use of preventative health care. Less education means poorer health outcomes, and we're trying to avoid poorer health outcomes. So how is this affecting women? Menstrual irregularities and disorders are on the rise. Let's take a look at a few of the main ones, starting with pain. Dysmenorrhea, or, well, period pain, is typically associated with cramping, nausea, vomiting, sleeplessness, depression, headaches, and other conditions. It's the most common gynecological disorder in young women and is affecting just under 3/4 of young women worldwide, just under 75%. Research from 2019 has found that period pain can have a negative impact on everyday tasks and experiences, including education. Even when individuals can tolerate menstrual pain and attend school, they report that they underperform as a result of poor concentration. Period pain has severe consequences to people's day-to-day life. Period pain affecting daily function isn't normal. We grew up believing it's normal because it is so common, and are then brushed off and told just to deal with it. Just because something is common does not mean it's normal. Moving on to endometriosis. It's a disease where excess uterine lining grows outside the uterus. It is associated with severe, life-impacting pain during periods, sexual intercourse, bowel movements, and/or urination. It's also associated with chronic pelvic pain, abdominal bloating, nausea, fatigue, and sometimes depression, anxiety, and infertility. That's a lot of bad things. Now, endometriosis affects roughly 10% of reproductive age women and girls globally. That's over 190 million people. Endo is weirdly mysterious, as there are so many unknowns about it, and its diagnostic criteria varies wildly. So we don't know the true number of endo cases or whether it's actually increasing or not. This is ultra problematic when we know so little about a disease that can be so debilitating, affect so many women worldwide, and has no known treatment to date. Next, let's take a quick look at polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS. It's a condition affecting the ovaries. It can cause women to not ovulate, which ovulation is really, really important when it comes to your menstrual cycle function and its normalcy. Also for fertility later down the track. It is an imbalance of androgen hormones and insulin resistance. Women often get painful cysts, have irregular periods, weight gain, acne, excessive body hair, and infertility, to name a few symptoms associated. Now, PCOS affects an estimated of 18 to 13% of reproductive age women worldwide. That's even higher than endometriosis, and up to 70% of women remain undiagnosed. This is probably at least 1/3 of women. That's a lot of women. So a lot of people have these issues, but actually have no idea that these are their issues. Researchers found that the prevalence of PCOS has increased by nearly 65% over the past decade. 65%! Despite us worshipping at the altar of modern medicine, something is broken and women are actually getting sicker. And we also found women with PCOS had more severe observed observable traits overall than a decade ago. So not only is it increasing, but the severity of it is getting worse. It is also the leading cause of infertility, which I think is quite alarming considering 70% of people with PCOS go undiagnosed. So you might end up with people suffering from infertility because they've got PCOS, but they would not know because they have not received a diagnosis. So therefore they can't even look into treating that because they don't really know what the problem is. The rate at which PCOS is increasing is alarming, especially considering its significant negative effects on women. Speaking of infertility, infertility affects 17.5% of the adult population. So worldwide, 1 in 6 are diagnosed with infertility. So let's put this into perspective. Based on those numbers, if you have 5 friends, 1 of you will be diagnosed with infertility. Let that nasty reality sink in. That's how prevalent it is. Let's take a closer look at some of these statistics. 19% of American women of childbearing age are unable to get pregnant after 1 year of trying. And infertility rates have been on the rise for the last 30 years. This is with modern medicine in arguably the most technologically advanced Western country in the world. With everything we know, why are women becoming more infertile? In my experience, it doesn't make sense that the body would just decide to be infertile for no reason. Sickness always has a cause, and in this case, I believe that cause is menstrual dysfunction. Poor women's health education is leading to undiagnosed menstrual dysfunction and disease, which is leading to infertility. So when you look at all the main causes of infertility, it's all pretty much just menstrual dysfunction. It's not just infertility because the body has just decided it doesn't want to be fertile. That's not our design, and it really just doesn't make sense. All of this is painful and devastating for so many. The female body is designed to be healthy, pain-free, and to bear children. It doesn't make sense as to why, in a medically advanced society, we would have such rising rates of disease and infertility. Let's stop telling women that menstrual dysfunction is normal or that infertility is normal just because it's so common. Sickness really isn't normal, nor should it be. It would be great to see the system shift. So what would that look like? First of all, no more shame. Let's normalize having periods, talking about periods, and the menstrual cycle in whole. As a woman, for most of my life, I felt disgusting that I bled every month. This is not okay. Let's start acting like it's normal because it's normal. Secondly, parents, teachers, and doctors, and anyone responsible for education need to start talking and teaching about this sooner, more in depth and more frequently. It's coming too late, and it's not practical or helpful when it does. And lastly, the medical system just needs to step up. Stop overprescribing drugs to mask symptoms just because it's the most profitable option or the easiest option. I do believe that individual medical staff genuinely care about the patient and really want to help change lives, but many of the current incentives have led to a broken system that isn't interested in the root cause, leaving a lot of people lost and hopeless. But a healthy person just doesn't make a good customer. We need to address the menstrual cycle as a 5th vital sign, as recommended by the American Gynecology Association. Have it checked on and asked about every doctor visit. If there are irregularities, they should be addressed and investigated to provide adequate treatment rather than the one option of hormonal birth control to mask symptoms. With this, I believe we would see an increase in women's health empowerment and a decrease in menstrual health issues and infertility. But until then, what we can do is educate ourselves and others. If you like this video, subscribe and check out this video right here where I dive into the data of how society tricked women into hating kids. Aggressive title, I know, but go check it out and take a look and see what I'm talking about. I'll see you in that one. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Okay,